Hey there, Mr. Redder here. Welcome back to another episode of r/Entitled People Stories. Our first story we'll be reading today. Karen tries to return a fake designer bag, gets caught, and leaves in handcuffs. I work at a high-end designer store that specializes in luxury handbags, the kind that cost more than a month's rent for most people. Our clientele is usually wealthy, polite, and they know exactly what they're buying. But every now and then, we get the scammers, the ones who think that they can outsmart the system and walk away with free money. And that's exactly what happened on the day that this took place. It was a slow afternoon when she walked in. I had dealt with her type before on many occasions. Phone held out in front of her on speaker, barking orders at some poor soul on the other end. She walked straight to my counter like she owned the place. Without so much as a greeting, she slammed it on the counter and announced, "I need a refund. This bag is fake." Immediately, my instincts went on high alert. I looked down at the handbag she was pushing toward me, and it only took half a second to realize something was wrong. The stitching was off, the leather felt like plastic, and the brand's signature emblem was slightly crooked. But I kept my expression neutral, and I asked her, "Do you have the receipt?" Karen wasn't amused and acted like I had just insulted her intelligence. "I don't need a receipt. I bought it here. Your store sells fake bags, and I want my money back now." I carefully picked up the bag, pretending to examine it, while I internally debated my next move. She was acting way too aggressive for someone who had genuinely been scammed, and the more I looked at the bag, the worse it got. The logo had spelling errors, the lining inside was cheap polyester instead of silk, and the hardware was way too light. This wasn't just a knockoff, it was a poorly made one. "I'm sorry, ma'am," I said as politely as I could, "but this isn't a bag we sell." Karen's face turned red. "Are you calling me a liar?" she shrieked. A few nearby customers turned to look. "I've spent thousands here. I know the manager. Call them right now." I nodded and excused myself to the back. But instead of calling my manager, I called security. Then, just for fun, I pulled up our system records to check for any purchases under her name. Nothing, not a single transaction. When I returned, Karen had both hands on her hips, tapping one foot impatiently. "Well," she demanded, "are we getting this resolved, or do I need to call corporate?" I kept my tone professional. "Our manager will be here shortly." Right on cue, my manager stepped out, followed closely by two security guards. She barely glanced at the bag before shaking her head. "This isn't ours." Karen exploded. "Are you kidding me? I bought it here last week. I demand a refund." My manager crossed her arms. "We don't sell fakes. And if you did purchase this here, you'd have a receipt. But we checked our records, and there's no transaction under your name." That's when Karen made her fatal mistake. She grabbed the bag, turned on her heel, and tried to walk right out the door. Big problem. The second she attempted to leave with the bag, security stepped in. "Ma'am, we need you to stay right here." She whirled around, eyes wide with fake innocence. "What? I'm just leaving. You won't refund me, so I'm taking my bag." One of the security guards stepped forward. "Ma'am, you attempted to return counterfeit merchandise for a refund. That's fraud." That's when she started backpedaling. Wait, I didn't know it was fake. Someone must have switched my bag. This is a misunderstanding." Karen's confidence was crumbling fast. Then, things took an even bigger turn. A second security guard, who had been quietly talking into his radio, turned back toward Karen. "Ma'am, we ran your name, and you have prior fraud charges. The police are on their way right now." Karen's face drained of color. "Wait, what? You don't have to do that. Let's just forget the refund, okay? I'll just leave." Too late. Moments later, two police officers walked in. One of them approached her while the other spoke with my manager. After a few minutes, the first officer turned towards Karen and said, "Ma'am, right now, you're being detained." Karen's fake confidence finally shattered. "Please, it was a mistake. I didn't mean to." It was too late. Karen was led out of the store, still begging them to just let her go. Turns out she had been pulling this scam at multiple high-end stores in the area, buying cheap knockoffs, then trying to return them for cash. But this time, she picked the wrong store. Our store had zero tolerance for fraud, and we made sure she faced the consequences. And that's how a scammer went from demanding a refund to getting a free ride in the back of a police car. I love my fiancé, but I hate my engagement ring. How do I tell him? A wonderful thing happened this past weekend. My boyfriend of 5 years proposed to me. It was incredibly romantic, more perfect than anything I could have planned myself. I'm over the moon and thrilled about our future together. But there's one thing casting a shadow over my excitement: my ring. When my fiance and I started talking seriously about getting engaged, I made it clear that I wanted to either pick out the ring together or have some input. I told him he could ask me questions about my preferences, look through my existing jewelry to understand my style, or get advice from my mom or my sister. He wanted it to be a surprise, so he chose the second option. I was nervous because I can be picky about jewelry, but I trusted that he would take the time to make a thoughtful choice. The only guidance I gave him were simple: nothing pink, no sapphires, and no diamonds. As it turns out, I hate the ring. Not just in a "this is not my style but I could learn to like it" way. I mean in a "this is something I would never ever wear" type of way. And I feel absolutely awful for thinking that, but I just can't help it. My issues with it: it's huge and gaudy, the kind of ring you would expect to see an older woman who loves extravagant jewelry wearing. It's in the shape of a heart. I dislike heart-shaped jewelry, which is why I've never owned any until now. It's amber. While I like light or honey-colored amber, this one is way too dark. On top of that, amber is incredibly impractical for an everyday ring. It will become scratched and dull very quickly. I just don't understand why he picked this ring for me. It's so far from my style, and it's clear he didn't do any research. If he had, he would have known that amber was not a durable choice. It honestly hurts that this is the ring he chose, because to me, it shows a lack of care. It feels like he just picked something random without considering what I would actually like. The worst part is that I have no idea how to bring this up to him. We share everything and never keep secrets. So it's eating me up inside that I'm hiding how I feel about something as significant as my engagement ring. How do I talk to him about this without hurting his feelings? I love him deeply, and I'm so happy to be engaged, but I can't wear this ring forever. I need advice. Update. After he got home last night, we had dinner and cuddled on the couch. I knew this was the right moment to bring it up. I started by telling him how excited I was to marry him and how much I loved the proposal. Then I took a deep breath and said, "I'm so sorry to do this, but we're going to have to pick a different ring. The amber is too delicate and will get damaged quickly, and the ring is just too big for my hand. I kept banging it into everything today. It's not practical for everyday wear." His face fell immediately. He looked like he was about to cry, which made me feel even worse. He put his head down and said, "You don't like it. Just be honest." I admitted that the impracticality of the ring was a real issue, but also that I simply did not like it. I told him, "I am kind of confused about why you picked it, because it's nothing like the rest of my jewelry, and it's absolutely massive." By then, he was crying and said, "That's the point. I wanted something completely different. All your rings are so plain. I wanted this one to stand out so everyone would see it and know that I love you." I had suspected this was his reasoning, and some of the people who responded to my post had guessed the same. I told him I understood where he was coming from, but that I wanted the ring to be something I actually liked, since I would be wearing it for the rest of my life. I also explained how fragile amber is, which he hadn't realized. He said he chose amber because he liked that there were things inside of it. I asked if he had thought about what he wanted in a ring before buying it. When he admitted that he hadn't, that he had simply gone to the mall and picked one at random, I started crying too. I hadn't planned to tell him that his choice hurt me, but hearing that he put so little thought into something so significant really stung. I did my best to explain my feelings clearly, and I could see that he felt terrible. He said the whole process had overwhelmed him, and he regretted not picking the ring out with me. When it came time to choose, he panicked and went for the most romantic thing he saw. We both cried, but the conversation was ultimately a good one. By the end of it, everything was okay. He's the best guy I could ever ask for, just with really bad taste in jewelry. But he now recognizes that, and we're going to pick out a new ring together this weekend. My daughter stole her stepsister's most treasured possession. Now my ex thinks I'm too harsh. I married my wife 5 years ago. I have 2 daughters from my first marriage, Rose, who's 15, and Nicole, who's 13. My wife has a daughter, Becca, who's 16. Becca's father has been absent for most of her life, so her grandfather stepped in as a father figure. He was everything to her, the man who taught her how to ride a bike, cheered her on at school events, and always made her feel loved. When he passed away a year before I met my wife, it shattered her. Time has helped, but I know she still carries that loss. Since marrying my wife, I've tried my best to be there for Becca. I know I'll never replicate her grandfather, but over the years, we've grown incredibly close. She trusts me, comes to me for advice, and even refers to me as her dad when talking to friends. It really means a lot to me. One of Becca's most treasured possessions is a necklace with her grandfather's wedding ring attached to it. My wife gave it to her on her 13th birthday, and Becca only wears it on special occasions or when she wants to feel close to him. It stays safely in her jewelry box the rest of the time. Rose and Nicole know how much it means to her. Rose once complimented the ring and asked to borrow it, but Becca immediately refused. Rose didn't argue, she just nodded, and I thought that was the end of it. Last week, after Rose and Nicole returned to their mom's house, Becca came to me in a panic. Her necklace was gone. She was frantic, tearing through her room, checking every drawer, every surface, her face growing more distressed with every passing second. She swore she hadn't taken it out since a dance a month ago, but had definitely seen it in her jewelry box since then. I tried to calm her down, but she was on the verge of tears. While we were searching, Nicole called. Becca, still distraught, told her what was happening. There was a brief pause before Nicole passed the phone to Rose. Rose hesitated, but then admitted, in a guilty whisper, that she had taken the necklace. She said that she had wanted to wear it for an upcoming date. I told her she had to bring it back immediately, and that we'd talk about how unacceptable this was later. Becca, overhearing, looked betrayed. I could see the anger welling up inside her, but I told her to hold on until we had the necklace back. She took a deep breath, but her hands were still shaking. I drove to my ex's house that evening. When Rose opened the door, she looked nervous. She wasn't holding the necklace. That was when she admitted she couldn't find it. Panic set in. I didn't yell, but I was firm. We needed to find it now. We searched her room, her bags, my car, even her mother's house, but nothing. I took her back with me so she could retrace her steps. When Becca saw Rose empty-handed, she lost it. She called her a selfish brat, her voice cracking with emotion, and said she would never forgive her if the necklace was gone forever. Rose burst into tears, looking at me for help, but I just told her that she had to keep looking. She had made this mess, and she had to fix it. After what felt like hours of searching, Rose finally thought to check under her mom's car. There it was, lying on the ground, somehow undamaged. Relief washed over me. I picked it up and handed it to Becca, who snatched it and clutched it tightly to her chest. I turned to Rose and told her she was incredibly lucky. If that necklace had been run over, it would have been destroyed. She kept apologizing, looking utterly ashamed, but I told her that while I believed she was sorry, that didn't erase what she had done. I grounded her. She wouldn't be going on that date or doing anything else for a while. Later that night, she called Becca to apologize again, but Becca was still too angry. She told Rose she would never trust her again. At Becca's request, we got her a locking jewelry box and a lock for her door. It was clear she wasn't taking any chances anymore. Now, my ex is mad at me. She thinks we're being too hard on Rose, that we should have comforted her instead of punishing her. She says Rose is just a teenager who made a mistake. But this wasn't a simple mistake. Rose knew how much that necklace meant, was explicitly told she couldn't borrow it. She took it anyway, and then almost lost it forever. If it had been destroyed, there would have been no replacing it. I told Rose I love her, but if I had comforted her beyond what I already did, I would have been coddling her. She needs to understand the weight of her actions. My wife, Becca, and even Nicole agree with me. But now I'm wondering, was I too harsh? Edit. Some are asking if I think Rose did this on purpose to hurt Becca. I don't believe so, and Becca has confirmed she doesn't think so either. Even before Becca started yelling, Rose looked genuinely upset and remorseful. I think she just made a selfish, thoughtless decision. She has a big date coming up, which she's no longer going on because she's grounded, and she wanted to wear something special. That doesn't make it okay, but I don't believe she meant to hurt Becca. Edit 2. A lot of people are asking how the necklace ended up under the car. It's hard to explain since I didn't take pictures at the time, but it wasn't directly underneath. Based on where we found it, I believe it fell from Rose's pocket where she had put it, and it got kicked slightly under the car. The garage where my ex parks is dimly lit, so it blended in with the ground, making it hard to see at first. Rose only thought to check because she was retracing her steps, and she got desperate. I understand why some people think she might have taken it maliciously, but even Becca has said that the outfit Rose planned on wearing for her date would have matched the necklace perfectly. So, as dumb as it was, I believe her when she says it was about fashion and not spite. Not the jerk. After a cooling off time, you might sit down with Rose, talk through what she did and why. Is she feeling jealous of your relationship with Becca? That's the time when you tell her that she made a huge mistake, give her a hug, and tell her that you love her. Not the jerk. Your daughter is lucky that necklace was found, but I would never trust her again either. You don't just take people's stuff without their permission, especially when permission was already denied previously. Good on you for getting the locking jewelry box and the door lock. I'm struggling to rebuild my self-worth after my ex-fiance left me for someone who's a better version of me. I was with my ex-fiance for 7 years. He's the only romantic partner I've ever truly loved. I was completely head over heels in love with him. Even now, after all of this, I still feel that way about him. He's charming, goofy, kind, quick-witted, interesting, ambitious, and gorgeous. We got engaged 2 years ago, but we weren't in a rush to get married. About a year ago, we began to seriously contemplate trying for a baby. We had lived together happily for 6 years, and we had done all the traveling and partying we wanted to in our 20s, and we were excited to start our family together. Over the next 6 months, he was much busier than normal, but I didn't think anything was wrong. I did my best to alleviate any extra stress he had, though I was experiencing some extra pressure at work too, by taking over all the housework and errands, helping him organize and pack for trips, and just being understanding when he would work very late or need to leave for a week or two. We didn't spend as much time together during that period, and I missed him a lot, but I thought we were still happy. When the 6 months were over, our schedules reverted back to normal. I felt relieved until I started to notice him becoming more distant, despite the fact that we finally had more time together. He started going on his phone more frequently when we were together and seemed to be more protective of his phone. I'm not generally a jealous person, and I trusted him completely, so I didn't think much of it. Then, one day, after another month had passed, I brought up the topic of trying for a baby as we had discussed. I could immediately tell something was wrong. He was quiet for a while, and then he unleashed a flood. He said he was unhappy with our relationship and had been for some time. He said that he cared about me deeply, but that the spark in our relationship had died, and that he tried to convince himself he could live without that spark, but had ultimately decided that he couldn't. He said I had done nothing wrong, and in fact was the perfect partner, but that didn't change the fact that he couldn't shake this nagging feeling that I wasn't the one for him. He said that he didn't want to hurt me, but that he couldn't condemn himself to a lifetime of settling for someone that wasn't his dream girl, even though he didn't know if his dream girl existed. He said he was sorry, but he couldn't live a lie anymore. I don't think I said a single word as he was telling me all of this because I just felt so utterly shocked and blindsided. I just stood there staring and listening and crying silently. When he finished, all I could utter was something like, "Okay, I'm sorry. I didn't know. Do you still love me?" He paused for a while, and then he said that he loved me but wasn't in love with me anymore. We proceeded to spend the whole night discussing his feelings and our relationship, until we were both so exhausted we couldn't cry anymore, and the sun was coming up. He said he was sorry again, and it was probably best if he stayed at a friend's place, so he packed up some stuff and left. That was about 5 months ago. We never really talked in person again. His brother and his best friend came over that weekend to get the rest of his stuff, and I just left while they were packing because I couldn't stand to be there. I felt so shocked and numb and tired that I didn't even cry much. I couldn't really process what was happening as I went through the motions of moving out and explaining the situation to my family. When I finally moved into my new place and sat alone with my boxes, I completely broke down. I couldn't stop crying and dry heaving. I ended up using 5 vacation days to take off a week of work, which really irked my manager. I couldn't get out of bed. I barely ate, living off this old tub of peanut butter. I looked through all our old pictures and tried to figure out where it all went wrong. Then, for 4 months, I tried my best to move on. I deleted all my social media apps so I wouldn't have to see them. I dove into work. I ramped up my hobbies. I exercised to keep my mind occupied. I met with friends and family and pretended everything was okay. I started going to my therapist again, which helped a bit. I finally thought I could see the light at the end of the tunnel. Then a month ago, I ran into a mutual friend from college. She said it was really sad to see we weren't together anymore and surprising to see he had moved on so fast. I told her I wasn't keeping up with him anymore, but that I was doing okay. When I got home, even though I knew it was a terrible idea, I re-downloaded Instagram and went to his profile. His latest picture was him at his cousin's wedding with his arm around a gorgeous girl. All the old pictures of him and I were gone from his profile. Again, I knew it was a terrible, self-destructive idea, but I went to the girl's profile and Googled her. She's literally a younger, smarter, prettier, and better version of myself. We both studied at the same university, but she completed a prestigious program, which I was rejected from. We both have green eyes and brown hair, but she's far prettier and legitimately looks like a model. We're both thin and fit, but she has an amazing hourglass figure and looks far more stylish than me and has tens of thousands of followers, even though she's not an influencer or whatnot. In fact, we both work at the same company. I'm pretty sure my ex met her through work, but she landed a job in a prestigious division right out of undergrad and likely makes more money than me. She's an improved version of me, 7 years younger, and the love of my life is dating her. For the past month, I've been spiraling. I can't stop stalking my ex-fiancé and this girl. I look at her Instagram every day and see how gorgeous she is. She's posted a dozen pictures with my ex over the past few months, and he looks so happy, healthy, and fit. They've gone on trips together. He's brought her to his hometown, and he's even posted a picture of them with a mushy caption, which he never did when we were together. I have no evidence, and I don't think my ex would do this, but I now suspect he was at least interested in her while we were still together. She started at the company about a year ago. I'm so paranoid of running into them. I can recognize that my behavior is obsessive, and I've deleted Instagram and told myself I'm not going to do this anymore, only to wake up the next day and re-download the app and do it all over again. My therapist has been trying to help, but I just can't move past this. I'm stuck in this mental loop of self-loathing and self-pity, this crazy mix of extreme sadness and latent anger. I feel so incredibly low, worthless, used up, discarded, and suddenly so incredibly old. I know that comparison is the thief of joy. I know that I'm objectively still young enough to move on. I know that social media is a highlight reel and their relationship may not be perfect. I know that this girl has done nothing wrong to me and that my ex deserves to find his dream girl. But none of this knowledge helps soften the fact that I thought that by this time this year, I would be pregnant with the love of my life, and instead, I'm alone and he's found someone better. Please, if you've ever experienced something similar, share your words of wisdom or commiserate with me. I don't know. I just feel so worthless and alone. Update 3 months later. The night I made that post, I finally blocked my ex-fiancé and his girlfriend on Instagram, as many of you suggested. I resolved to break out of that self-destructive loop. It was an incredible relief to not be constantly following the impulse to view their new pictures and give myself some time to heal instead of picking at that scab every single day. That weekend, I decided to reconnect with my family and friends and stop pretending that I was handling the breakup flawlessly. They were incredibly compassionate, though also shocked that I had been hiding my dark feelings so well, and it was like I'd instantly rebuilt my support network. I didn't realize how emotionally isolated I had become until I was able to be honest and open with people in my life. I did continue to avoid talking to friends who were mutual friends with my ex because I didn't want to put anyone in an awkward position, but I was able to reconnect with a few of my other friends, and I took the initiative to finally make some fun plans. Getting out of the house to enjoy brunches, hikes, and shows with my friends over the past few months has been incredibly beneficial for my mental health. Just being in new environments and focusing on people other than my ex was therapeutic, even for an introvert like myself. Per your suggestions, I also decided to try out another therapist. I did find my original therapist somewhat helpful, but I also felt like he wasn't able to relate to some of the nuances in my issues, given that he was in his late 50s. So we had a bit of a generational gap. My new therapist is incredibly compatible with me and instantly understood the intricacies of my problems. She has helped considerably with addressing the roots of my insecurities and was able to validate and analyze my feelings in a much more intimate way. If you're struggling to find therapy useful, I highly recommend shopping around for a bit to find a compatible therapist. Another popular suggestion from you guys was finding a job at another company away from my ex-fiancé and his girlfriend. I didn't think that would be possible since the job market in my field isn't great at the moment, but I began actively searching for other positions. I brushed up my resume, filled out a couple of applications, and even surprisingly secured an interview. Then, out of the blue, someone above me in my division quit to join a competitor. The senior managers were quite eager to fill his role quickly, so they decided to go with an internal hire. And after 5 or 6 rounds of interviews, I got the job. I'm so grateful for this promotion. Not only is the salary substantially better, but the hours are actually more consistent as well. It's crazy. I feel like the momentum of my life has shifted so quickly, and I finally have an office. It's tiny, but I really enjoy it. The only downside was this promotion also meant I would have to continue working in the same building, albeit a very large building, as my ex. And as I left work before Christmas, the moment I'd been dreading came. I ran into my ex as I was leaving the office. We exchanged a few pleasantries, and he complimented my new haircut. I thanked him, wished him well, and said I had to hurry to catch the next train. I wish I could say I felt cool and collected, but I was so nervous to see him again for the first time in like 6 months that I was almost shaking. On the commute home, I calmed down and actually thought, hey, that wasn't so bad. He looked good, but I didn't feel a rush of sadness or desire or anything. I mostly just felt awkward, like we'd become strangers again. I didn't feel that familiar impulse to stalk his Instagram and actually felt happy to see he was doing okay since I had cared for him for so many years. I felt like at last, I was really moving forward. The next day, I woke up to a dozen messages from my ex-fiancé. They started at around 2 a.m. and were slightly incoherent in parts, so I'm guessing he was a bit drunk when he sent them. They were all long walls of text, which surprised me because he's not typically big on verbalizing his emotions. He wrote that he hadn't been able to stop thinking about me since we ran into each other outside the office, that he was sad that we weren't friends anymore because I still felt like his best friend, and that he regretted how everything went down. He said he questioned if he had made a huge mistake in a moment of weakness and messed up his whole life, and that he couldn't help but regret it all when he saw me. He apparently noticed that I had blocked him on Instagram, which I found funny given how intensely I had been stalking his Instagram, and said that made him really sad. I gathered from his messages that he had likely broken up with the woman I'd seen on his Instagram because he said that he felt like he had been searching for some ideal woman who doesn't exist, and that he wanted to reignite our spark after failing to find that same spark with someone else. I'm not going to lie, it was shocking to read his texts, and I was trembling and struggling to process a lot of it at first. Part of me wanted impulsively to give him another chance, but after taking a day to mull over his words, I ended up feeling like he was less sorry that he had lost our relationship and more sorry that the greener pastures he sought weren't quite as green as he'd imagined. I tried to respond kindly but firmly, saying that I really treasured and appreciated our relationship, but that I felt like I could no longer trust him to the same degree I once did, and that I felt like it would be confusing and painful for us to become friends in the near future. I told him how hurt I felt when he blindsided me after promising that nothing was wrong, and how I struggled for a long time to figure out what was missing in our relationship, but ultimately felt that as long as he thought the missing part was so crucial that he wanted to leave after all those years together, then we probably weren't meant to be together. I wished him the best. He didn't respond to my messages. I was a bit shaken by the whole thing, but I proceeded to enjoy my holiday break with my family and even elected to go to my friend's New Year's Eve party, which I was considering skipping. Well, I'm super glad I didn't skip the party because I ended up meeting a wonderful man there. He's funny, intelligent, cute, interesting, compassionate, and he's eager to settle down and have kids after also somewhat recently exiting a long-term relationship. We've gone on 3 dates so far, and at the risk of sounding too enthusiastic, they've been the best dates of my life. We want to take it slow since we were both in long-term relationships a year ago, but we've been stunned by how compatible our personalities and interests and goals are, and frankly, we're also both keen to start a family as soon as possible. So while I'm trying not to be overly confident in this relationship, I'm also super excited to see where it goes. My wife confessed to a drunken kiss. Now I can't look at her the same way. My wife and I have been married for 15 years, together for 20. We built a life together, raising 3 wonderful kids, and for the most part, we've been happy. Like any couple, we've had our ups and downs, but nothing has ever made me doubt our foundation. That was true until this last month. My sister-in-law's wedding took place in another state. Because of work obligations, I wasn't able to go, but my wife planned to attend for a full week. It wasn't ideal, but we made peace with it. She was excited to be there with family, and I encouraged her to have a great time. A few days into her trip, I received a call from her late at night. At first, I thought something had happened at the wedding, maybe an emergency, but as soon as I answered, I could hear the shakiness in her voice. She was crying. Through broken words and pauses filled with deep breaths, she admitted to something I never expected. She had kissed someone else. She did not try to justify it, and she didn't make excuses. She simply told me that it happened and that she was sorry. She explained that it was at a dinner party with old friends. One of them was a lifelong friend she had known for years. He was someone she had been close with when they were younger, but nothing ever came of it back then. She claimed the kiss wasn't planned. She had intended to give him a casual kiss on the cheek, a friendly gesture. But at the last second, something changed. Their lips met, and for a few seconds, just a few seconds, it lingered. She immediately felt horrible about it. She told me she had no explanation, no excuse, no justification. She wasn't drunk, though she had been drinking. She didn't even know why she did it. She just knew it was wrong. She offered to come home right away, to cut the trip short and be with me. I was shocked, hurt, and completely blindsided, but I told her to stay. I needed time to process everything, and honestly, I didn't want to make a decision in the heat of the moment. She promised me that she had already cut off all contact with him and had no intention of ever speaking to him again. She even said that if I wanted to confirm her story, I could call some of her friends who had witnessed it. When she finally returned home, it was clear that she had been carrying a heavy weight. She looked exhausted, not from travel, but from guilt. The first thing she did was apologize, not just once, but over and over. She explained everything again in person, down to every detail, but the story remained the same. She still had no real answer for why it happened. She just knew that it shouldn't have. I believed her. I could see how much she regretted it. Over the past month, she's done everything she can to prove to me that she's committed to our marriage. She stopped drinking, she started therapy, she's been more affectionate, more attentive, and more patient. It's like she's trying to rebuild something she accidentally shattered. And yet, I can't shake it. Even though I know it was just a kiss, even though I know she's taking every step to make amends, something inside me feels different now. The love I felt for her, it's not gone, but it's not the same either. It's like a part of me shut off, a part that I'm not sure how to turn back on. I've told her this. I haven't kept it bottled up. I've been honest about how I feel, and every time I say it, she breaks down. She cries, she apologizes again, and then she tells me she'll do anything to fix it. I want to move past this. I want to forgive her. I just don't know if I can. Around our kids, I make sure they don't see any of this. To them, everything's normal. I still give her hugs in front of them, still hold her hand when they're watching, still talk to her like I always have. But when we're alone, things are different. I'm distant. I can feel the tension, and I know she can too. She doesn't push me, but I can tell she's hurting. Is this something worth ending a marriage over? Or is it something that, in time, I can truly forgive? I think since she was immediately honest, it could be salvageable. Do some counseling together to reconcile your feelings and see if you can move on. Wait 3 months, then decide. You'll probably not be anywhere near as hurt and angry as you are now. Imagine finding out your significant other has a secret blackmail folder on their computer where they save info they can use to ruin people's lives. Then you see that they have a folder with your name on it. That's exactly what happens in this video right here, the one that just popped up on your screen. OP's girlfriend has a secret blackmail folder on him. You have to come see this one next. It's crazy. Just tap this button right here and we'll be right there waiting for you. And hey, if you love these, don't forget to subscribe.